Hi guys, my name is Christina and welcome to my channel, and in today's video we're going to be talking about tropes. Are they bad? Are they good? What do you do with them, and should you be afraid of them? And basically all things tropes. And unfortunately you can see I have this nice hoodie that says positive altitude. How cute is that? But you can't see it. But positive altitude, guys. Think about it. First of all, what is a trope? Basically, trope is a plot element that is recognizable and has been used before, and when we see it, we know it, we've already seen it many times before, and we know how it's gonna play out. And I talk a lot with other creators, and I obviously watch to, people like me who just have more followers. People like me that are other creators and writers that are online talking about their craft, and everybody seems to be afraid of tropes in a sense. They think, oh, my character is doing this and this, so it's a trope, so I have to cut it out. Or my character, going through this and this, it is a trope, damn, so I have to cut it out. And my thought is, should you really? I think it really depends on what are you doing with this plot element. Like, is this plot element even a trope? For example, I think trope is a trope when writers are using it on purpose because they want their readers to have like an easy experience. For example, you can see a lot of this of literature, for example commercial literature, that it's been written like to be like some other book or popular story. So for example, when Hunger Games came out, there was like an explosion of dystopian books that are basically have the same idea of the teenage female character, trying to overthrow the evil government, and government is being evil, and there's a boy who is in love with her, and all of that stuff, blah blah blah, and that becomes tropes because those other artists try to recreate the same experience. So tropes are not inherently bad. For example, not all the people, for example, want to pick up the story and be like, well, I want to read something that I've never read before. Some people just experience one story and they were like, well, I want just more like it. I want, go into the story knowing that it's gonna give me this amount of emotion. So I want to know what I'm signing up for. And especially you can see it like in romance. Like romance books is one big trope. Basically, they all have the same formula and they have the same promise for the reader. That's why readers pick them up, and writers, follow the tropes to kind of don't disappoint the reader, because that's what the reader is wanting and what the writer is giving. So tropes are not inherently bad, but I think that's what makes trope a trope, when the writer does it on purpose. However, if the writer does it accidentally, for example, they have the main character that is like a teenage female that's a little bit fighting against the world situation, you can say, well, that looks like a trope, but also, is it though? Because you're not doing it, for example, to try to recreate some commercial literature, for example, some successful stories. You're doing it because that's your story, and in your story that happened to be the situation. For example, your story really calls for a female protagonist. Your story really calls for this female protagonist being opposing those forces. Maybe that's the dynamic you actually want to explore, and it is interesting for you. So in this case, it's not a trope. Don't think, well, if it like those boxes are checked as a trope, I have to cut it out. More ask yourself, is it important for your story? Is that what your story is actually based on? And if it is, and if this is what you want to think about and explore in your art, so go for it. I don't think you have to change anything, because if it has a purpose in your story, well, obviously don't put anything else that is anything else but the purpose of your story. If something is not serving it, don't put it in there, just because if you think the original thing looks like a trope. I would say don't worry about this at all. And yeah, and also there's another situation. For example, if you're doing it for your story, it's very important to check in with yourself and ask, are you using this plot device, a plot element, because the story is calling for it, and because the story purpose is being fulfilled through this the most? or is it your crutch? So are you using this because you've seen it done so many times before in different other stories, and now this is the only thing you know? So this is a kind of different situation, and I would think it's good for you to analyze if this is the case. And if it is, then try to kind of zoom out a little bit from the situation and be like, well, but what's serving my story though then? And if you feel a little bit uncomfortable, a little scared because now you have to figure out something for yourself, that's totally fine. I think that's better to, clumsily try to figure out stuff yourself than to just be like, oh, they did it this way, I'm just gonna repeat. Or just, because why? You're writing your story, write your story, Don't try to, make a puzzle out of the stories. So sometimes we do it unconsciously just because in our mind, because we've seen it so many times, we think, well, this is how it's done. I personally believe that there is no one way of how the story is done. The story can be done in like billion, trillion ways, and you just do your own story and only, think about what's the purpose of your story. I made the ranty video when I'm talking about all like 3-act structure, all these advices that they say about how to write your story, and basically I go on a lot of tangent and just talking about how it's not important. I don't know. If you want to watch something like this, I'll link it below. But basically, yeah, that's what I believe. Write your own story. Unless, of course, the purpose of your story is just, give the readers what they want. Nothing wrong with that at all. So there still can be good story if you're using tropes on purpose. There still can be a good ideas within the story. And just know what is the purpose of the story is. That's basically it. And I know that people say a lot about my story, that my story is, there is a tropey element because I have, again, young female protagonist, but I don't think it's a trope. First of all, I have multiple characters, but the first story starts with her, and it's very, I think it's a very female story. It's about the girl coming into another world and adapting and taking it as her own, because in the end it is her own. But basically it's of adapting, of learning, of accepting, of, I think it's very feminine features, and I think it makes sense that the female character is doing it and going through the story. And she's young because I was young when I was writing it, and I only knew how to write from this perspective. And now that I'm older, being young and went through this kind of growing process with her, I think it's very beneficial that I'm writing a character like this. Besides, young characters are great to write because this is where we develop as people, and it's great device to use, how in every story normally shows the inner change in the character. And young people change the most because they're so flexible, their minds are very open. And I think it serves the story of discovering a new world very well, having a character with an open mind and very young and ready to adapt and, very fast learner and all of that. So even though there is a bunch of like tropey elements, I guess you can call in my story, they're not put there because I want to copy someone or I think it's a crutch, just because I think they actually fit. And if they look tropey, I'm not going to cut them out because in my opinion they serve the story. So that's my thought about tropes as for now. Let me know if this video was helpful. And actually, speaking of the idea for this video, actually one of the beautiful souls that read my comic actually gave me this idea. She is a writer herself and she's writing her own story, which is amazing. I will put her name somewhere over here on the screen because it's a login name, username, so I don't know how to quite pronounce it. So she actually gave me this idea and I thought I gotta explode with my opinions about this. So thank you so much for giving this idea. Thank you so much also for reading my comic. We always chat about like writer stuff in the comments, and she's amazing. So basically, yeah, that's all for this video, and thank you so much guys for watching. I hope this was helpful, and if you have your thoughts about this, please leave them below. Let's talk, let's keep rolling, let's continue the conversation. So yeah, thank you so much for watching, and see you in my next video. Thank you guys.